My goodness, but we're talkative this evening. I hope you had a great time. Sorry we're a little bit late getting started. We're in closed session. So this evening we can thank Aubrey Chang for our prelude music. Aubrey, I see you. Stand up. Stand up. Thank you very much. And yes, we have a couple of guests here, and we'll be hearing from them in just a minute. So we have our invocation this evening. It's going to be presented by Pastor Frank Correa of Calvary Chapel, Temecula Valley. So I'm sorry, I'm sitting behind the flowers. Good evening.
I'm actually not Frank Correa. I'm Chaplain Yost from the U.S. Navy.
Right. So. Hello.
Hey.
And our flag salute's going to be presented by Mayor Pro Tem Matt Ron. So if you'd please stand for invocation and the flag salute.
Please join me in prayer. Father God, we pause and acknowledge you this evening. We lift up and ask your blessing upon our community and our nation. Lord, protect and bless our first responders, our brothers and sisters in law enforcement, firefighters, paramedics, our military, and all who are so vital to our safety and success. God, we do pray for our city council members and our city officials. Grant them wisdom and understanding in all they do for us here in Temecula. Guide them as they consider and decide the difficult decisions laid before them. God, we now invite you here. Please lead us and guide us as a community, that we would continue to be a city that is always known for honor and righteousness in all that we do. We pray in your holy name. Amen.
All right, please join me in saluting our flag, placing your hand over your heart and repeating after me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. No. Yeah, I hope not. So, Madam City Clerk, could we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Comachero?
Here.
Councilmember Nagar?
Wolf.
Councilmember Ron?
That was you, I think.
Yes,
Was
I'm
it
here.
Ms. Matt Ron?
Councilmember Stewart is absent. Mayor Edwards?
Here. Well, let's dispatch with this then. So our first presentation will be the Temecula Police Department canines. We have them in the house today. We have Deka and Boris. And so Police Chief Lisa McConnell, I know you're out there. I just can't see you because of the flowers.
There she goes.
And you may have read in the newspaper in the last, I don't know, month or 6 weeks or so, that one of our canines, thank you, one of our canines made a significant drug discovery. So Lisa, would you like to kind of highlight that and tell us what happened?
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Mayor, City Council, and staff. First, I'd like to introduce our returning guests, Officer King and Boris. And as you can see, Boris is really excited to be here again. This is his second visit.
I see you.
And he's very happy.
Yeah.
And then Officer Kramer, he has our newest addition, which is Deka. So I'm sure, Mayor, you'd like to come and meet her after I have Officer King tell us a little bit about that. He's been very busy this last year, so I think maybe we can do like a little recap of what they've been up to.
Yeah, we'd love to hear that. And welcome.
Thank you for having us back. It's been about a year now since we were first here, and Boris and I have been partners now for a year out on the street, and after finishing our academy together, we went through the narcotics detection school back in February. It's been a busy year. As Captain said, we've had quite a few apprehensions, and then again, the narcotics detection that we had about a month ago was a great find for Boris. He was instrumental in finding the narcotics in that vehicle. Border Patrol had called us regarding a vehicle they had stopped, and we're talking with the occupants, and they were actually getting ready to let them go if they couldn't get a canine to come over and do a sniff on the vehicle. So we were lucky enough to be around and available to help out, and went over, and Boris was able to detect the odor of narcotics on the vehicle. They ended up taking it back to their checkpoint and located 53 pounds of cocaine.
Valued at,
I believe the value was over $700,000.
amazing. So, thank you, Temecula, for assisting the Border Patrol or Highway Patrol, and I know that both of those things take place. And so, and then we have our newest member, and how old is she?
Yes, and this is Dacre. She's going to do a demonstration for us if we have time.
Excellent, yes, we have time.
I don't know if anybody's noticed our Facebook page, but she did take over my office.
Yes.
Definitely made herself at home and has been a great addition.
This is where Mike dresses up in that big suit and then
Yes.
dog chase.
Yes.
The bite suit. The bite suit, right? And so we're taking Boris out of play because Boris is a little bit more aggressive than Dacre. So.
I'll explain this in a second.
Yeah. I can read the headlines now. Mayor concealing drugs in nameplate on city council.
Maybe you guys will be able to see it on the TV a little bit later. Just give you guys a heads up, a brief rundown of basically how these dogs work. We don't teach these dogs anything new. We just take innate behaviors and we teach them what they want to do with them. So a brief rundown of basically how this dog finds narcotics for us. It's not like we take them and get them addicted to drugs. I know that rumor goes out there. Basically, we just take the ability of the dog to find things with its nose. Anybody in the room right now can walk into a room and smell pizza. And what we know is basically there's a pizza in the room or popcorn, something of that. What you don't know is what kind of toppings are on the pizza or what the popcorn was made with, what type of butter and whatnot. When a dog walks into the room, it can smell the type of yeast that was used in making the bread, the type of bread, the anchovies, the pepperonis, the olives, whatever's on it. It smells each individual odor. So we use that ability to basically go into a room and scent the way that we see. So a dog sees all these scents basically with its nose, which is about 1 million times more impactful than ours. So basically, it's that much more powerful, is what science has basically told us. So what I did, Mayor Edwards, I basically put a little cotton swab that's been sitting in my pocket for about 30 minutes, and all it was basically in a box that had illegal narcotics in it. So just the air that was kind of swirling around that box has been absorbed by that cotton swab, and it's holding maybe 1 part per million of this illicit narcotic, and the dog will be able to source it out. She actually was sourcing it out from over here at the podium. So you can imagine however many pounds of cocaine my partner found was probably overloading Boris from when he got out of the car. But we can find any amounts from trace elements. A lot of times we catch guys that just basically touch drugs and then end up touching their car. And that's how we end up knowing that they were in contact with narcotics.
Amazing.
So I know you guys aren't going to be able to see it very well.
We've got you on video.
Oh, okay. And I'll go ahead and run her down the whole podium here, and you guys will see the change in behaviors that we look for when they find narcotics.
No, Peter, you're good. No, Matt, yep, you're good. Oh.
So that right there is her final alert. She does this little cha-cha dance sometimes. It's kind of funny. I'll see if I can get her to do it here in a minute. Basically, all she's doing right now is telling me that the narcotics are there, and she's waiting for me to give her a toy. So she's trying to cheat. She knows she's supposed to look at the narcotics, but she keeps looking back at me to see if she can beat me with the toy. Let's see if I can catch her when she's looking at it.
Oh, my goodness.
That's all they think they're looking for. So anybody that's heard that we get these dogs addicted to drugs to look for them, it has nothing to do with that. She just thinks that this smells like that. So she's just looking for her toy. Run her one more time from this side. Here, look. Look. Come here.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. She knows it's on one of these things now. Gotta remember which one. Go find it. You gotta show me. Go.
Says, oh, that lady looks too nice to have drugs in front of her podium seat.
Again, that's like 1 or 2 parts per million right there, just that little bit of odor.
So if I smelled the cotton ball, could I smell anything?
On that one, maybe. I don't know. It's been in my pocket for a little while, so it shouldn't, but that particular odor we can actually smell.
Wow.
Madam Mayor, quick question.
Sure,
So she's she's thinking she's looking for a toy.
Yeah, she thinks her toy.
Okay, and so is her toy laced with the smell?
So what we do, it's a very complicated process, and I'll try and dumb it or not dumb it down.
If you,
It's all right. We can handle the dumbed down version. It's all right.
hey, we've been called worse things, okay?
Hope you'll be very happy in your next job.
Yeah.
We take a toy that they like to play with. In this case, we took a Kong, and we cut it up into like a little tiny piece about 1 inch long, and we hid it in this big long wall, about the size of your guys' podium here, that had thousands of holes in it, and we put a little piece in there. And we'll run along until they get excited about this little piece because they know there's a toy in it, but they can't get to it. And we do that 1,000 times, and gradually we get the piece tinier and tinier and tinier, so they know they're going to be looking for itty bitty bits of wood. Then we'll take that tiny little piece of Kong, ends up being, you know, like a fingernail clipping, put it in the hole, and then put it in a hole with a little bit of the narcotic we're wanting to look for. Do that another 1,000 times, they're alerting to the toy, they're alerting to the odor, then you take the toy away. And they go down the line, and then they get that little bit of odor of that drugs, and they start to do their final alert. They start to tell us, hey, there's something here, but wait, my toy's not in there. Then you give them what we use as a clicker now. Give them their click, and you throw a toy at them. And then they're starting to associate, okay, this is what he's looking for. Then you just got to proof them off and looking for their toy, so that they're not going alerting to a bunch of toys in somebody's car. And now you have a dog that's on the other narcotics.
Got it.
With 4 odors: marijuana, cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine.
Got it.
Wow. And I'm just trying to get my dog to stop peeing in the house. Yeah. No, but we have a treat for you. So here, I'll bring treats.
Before somebody else finds it. Hey. Thank you.
So I notice we have lots of students with us this evening. So let's do a little poll. How many of you are here from Great Oak? No Wolfpack tonight? None? One? Oh, one. Okay, well, okay. That's big shoes to fill. You got to represent everybody. So Temecula Valley, go Bears, and Pumas. Pumas? Where you go? Oh, a lot of Pumas. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else? No, Linfield, no Rancho, no? Yeah, all right, there you go. And so why aren't you at your own council meeting this evening? All right, so.
We're more interested.
I know, we are a lot of fun. We are a lot of fun. So thank you all for coming, and you know, your hour will be up in 45 minutes, and we have the dogs here, so don't try to leave before the hour is up, okay? Okay, our next presentation is actually National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we have a proclamation. I'm trying to see where, this one's right in front of me. So is anybody here from ADV or maybe SAFE? SAFE? There you are, hi June.
members for safe.
Here they come. Safe Alternatives is a wonderful, wonderful resource for the city of Temecula and surrounding areas because they do handle cases of domestic violence. And, you know, domestic violence happens everywhere with every demographic, men and women. And sometimes SAFE has had to rally and, you know, do emergency pickups or meets in the middle of the night. And they just do whatever it takes to make sure that individuals are safe and out of harm's way. So here's the City of Temecula proclamation. Whereas domestic violence knows no boundaries and impacts women, men, and children of every age, background, and belief, and whereas domestic violence weakens the foundation of our community and impacts the lives of families and future generations, and whereas stopping the cycle of violence requires not only the strength and courage of survivors, but also the support and involvement of all members of the community, and whereas we affirm the basic human right to be free from violence and abuse and recognize that more work remains until every individual is able to live free from fear of abuse and violence. And whereas since 1998, Safe Alternatives for Everyone has been committed to providing a comprehensive network of programs and services to domestic violence victims and their families to break the cycle of violence. And whereas during National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we reaffirm our dedication to working together to end domestic violence so that no one suffers the hurt and humiliation and betrayal that it brings. Now, therefore, I, on behalf of the City Council, City of Temecula, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2017 to be National Domestic Violence Awareness Month and encourage our citizens to take a stand against domestic violence and support SAFE's efforts to provide life-saving services to those who suffer from these crimes. So I'm going to ask Mayor Pro Tem Ron to bring this down to you. And June, so why don't you give us an update and tell us what you're doing and what you're up to? And
well, this past week, we celebrated our annual meeting at City Hall, and we actually have served 3,700 clients. Of those clients, 2,000 were impacted by domestic violence. And from that amount, we had roughly close to 200 that were from our city in Temecula. So we are working tirelessly to help families impacted by domestic violence. And thank you, Temecula, and our community for your support and allowing us to provide the services to these families that are in greatest need.
well, we really need you. Sadly, we really need you, and we appreciate everything that you do to help our residents, both men, women, and children, families,
Thank you.
Find a safe place. So thank you very much. And you have a proclamation for you. And they partner with agencies too, police departments, the highway patrol, law enforcement, the district attorney's office, and they really do get the job done. So it's one of those critical services that we wish we didn't have to have, and we do have them, and we really appreciate everything that they do for the community. Okay. So this is a bittersweet proclamation and presentation, and even though she's going to hate it, I'm going to ask Sue Steffen to come forward. Sue has been with the City of Temecula and worked in the city manager's office, and she takes care of the council members, the city manager, assistant city manager, for 27 years. 27, and you're only, you're so young. So Sue is taking a well-earned and well-deserved retirement, and even though no one wants her to go, we love her, and we know that she's going to have a great time. She's already got big plans and everything. So Sue is also, she's behind the scenes a lot, and she isn't out in front like this. So, if this is difficult for you, try not, do your best. So we have a very long proclamation here, but I have to read it because you will not believe some of these numbers. So this is City of Temecula proclamation. Whereas Sue Steffen began her career with the City of Temecula in December of 1990 as employee number 33. Goodness, just 12 months after the city incorporated, and whereas Sue is the city's only executive assistant to have worked directly for all 5 city managers and all 16 council members, either elected or appointed in the history of the city. And whereas Sue commenced her position at the city when the population was 27,416 residents, when Temecula's area code was 714, when police officers directed traffic at all I-15 freeway off-ramps because there were no traffic signals, when the mall property was a field for cattle and sheep to graze, when the city's major shopping choices were Target or Mervyn's, when the city had not yet constructed any new public works of which 41 exist today, or public parks of which 41 exist to date, when typewriters were still utilized, my goodness, when fax machines and car phones were the latest technology, and when the internet did not exist. Whereas Sue has witnessed the city transform its population quadruple, and generations of employees come and go, all the while steadfastly and seamlessly keeping every moving part perfectly organized for the office of the mayor, city council, city manager. Oh my goodness. And whereas Sue has been involved in the preparation of agenda materials and notice for thousands of public meetings over 27 years, whereas Sue has calendared approximately 56,160 appointments on behalf of the mayor, city council, and city manager, and whereas since becoming the city's executive assistant in 1990, Sue has responded to, coordinated, forwarded, or directly handled over 14,754 public inquiries to the city manager and city council's office, and composed an additional 14,040 individual telephone messages. See, you didn't think we were watching you all that time, huh? Whereas Sue has written, reviewed, edited, processed, or finalized onto official city letterhead over 18,200 letters, staff reports, press releases, purchase orders, invoices, grant applications, PowerPoints, newsletters, articles, speeches, agendas, minutes, agreements, invitations, flyers, and more. And Sue has assisted the city manager's office in the production of 27 state of the city addresses, one of which she managed all by herself. Whereas during her 27 years of service to the city of Temecula, Sue worked at the previous 2 city hall buildings in the industrial park area and is now ending her career at the city's permanent home in Old Town. And whereas Sue is retiring with the city record as longest serving employee to the city of Temecula, leaving a legacy of professionalism, eloquence, articulacy, and deep caring for her city, and through this and her diplomacy, intelligence, savviness, and strong work ethic, she has gained the respect of the city's current and former elected officials, city managers, executive staff, and fellow colleagues. Now, therefore, I, Mary Ann Edwards, on behalf of the City Council of the City of Temecula, hereby proclaim November 2nd to be Sue Stephan Day, and on behalf of the City Council, you know how much we love and appreciate you, and it is very bittersweet, but my goodness, look at all the numbers that we just shared in here. This woman has worked tirelessly on behalf of Temecula residents for 27 years, and for that, I think she deserves a standing ovation.
Thank you.
So you guys come to eat.
I have really loved working for the city and watching it grow. It's been my best job ever. But the one thing that I'm really going to miss is all the wonderful people that I work with.
Oh, we're going to miss you too. Can you imagine some of the telephone calls this woman has taken and how diplomatic she has to be? I mean, it's incredible.
Madam Mayor, may I say something?
Sue, I'm glad you invited us all down because everything that you read about Sue Stephan was an understatement, okay? I've been here for almost 20 years now. I've never seen Sue get impatient. I've never seen her lose her temper. We've done a lot of amazing things here in the city of Temecula over these years, and you quickly learn that nothing gets done by any one person. It's usually team collaboration. But there's a lot of people behind the scenes that play just as big a part as we do, sitting up here in front of the lights and the camera. And you could easily be called the sixth council member. Easily.
Sometimes the fifth.
So, yes. And frankly, I don't know how we're going to replace you, but I can tell you we love you, and I thank you for making us all look good, stay on time, meet our appointments, and working all of our schedules, because I don't know how I'd do it without you.
If I may, I think this one's not on. Thank you. You know, Sue, I was just looking around on the dais and in the audience. We have an awful lot of city employees, and we as the council up here. I don't think there's anybody employed at the city who's ever known anyone else sitting in that chair other than you. I mean, that's remarkable when you think about it. And I will tell you in front of the world, I could never have done this job for 20 years without you. We love you.
Well, there's no opportunity for you to be in the background right now. So you're the bright shining star in the city manager's office and our offices. It's always a pleasure to see you. You make our work so much easier, and you do such an amazing job. You're the highlight of coming to the office because you're so nice. Not that the rest of the folks aren't. I love you guys too, but really, I mean, really, it's amazing. You always you've made this experience for, I know, all of us, but me included, just amazing and wonderful. And I'm extremely disappointed that you're leaving, but I know we'll always have a special place in our heart for you, and hope that you come and visit us from time to time.
I always tell Sue and anybody else that will listen that just trying to keep the council members' calendars straight is ridiculously difficult, and I could not do it and wouldn't do it, and she's done it so seamlessly and with a smile. One of the numbers I read to you was that Sue had calendared 56,160 appointments, and of those 56,160, where's Betsy? How many of them were canceled? Yeah, 2,000, 3,000, or those had to be canceled and rescheduled. So she had to do some of them twice and sometimes 3 times. And just imagine trying to get the 5 of us, in the right place at the right time. It's mind-boggling. And she has done it with grace and professionalism and aplomb, and we can't say enough about you. And I'm sure there are some people sitting up behind us that would like to say a few things too. So I'm going to lay this on the podium for you, and you're still going to have to stand here for a few more minutes. I'm sorry. I know this is really hard. So, okay. Anybody want to say anything? We're going to start down there.
Notice we actually got a frame. I know, that's awesome. And I didn't have to get it.
I know, yeah, you did have to buy your own frame.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, I'm going to miss you.
Sue, I'm going to miss you tremendously. I don't think I can put into words sort of the incredible support of having you outside my office. And this woman is incredibly organized, and what the council shared tonight is right on point. She is the machine that keeps us organized in our office. And, I've had the privilege of working with you only for 22 of your 27 years. But I've seen a lot, and I've gotten to watch many of the folks that you supported over the years, and now I'm one of those individuals that's directly benefiting from you, and I'm going to miss you. And on behalf of the city of Temecula, you are going to be tough to replace, and you've done an amazing, amazing job, and I know you're going out with your head held high and proud of what you've accomplished, and you should. So these folks, the team may want to say things, but on behalf of all of them, Sue, we love you, and thank you for everything.
Well, you guys have said it all. I've only been up in the city manager's office now 4 years, and I can tell you those 4 years have been some of the easiest and the smoothest, thanks to the woman that's stepping down from that position right now. I was welcomed into that office. Sue and I worked together when I was sitting over where Pat sits in the Public Works Department. Everyone goes to Sue. I can see all these people out here that work with me, they're shaking their heads. They're not knowing what they're going to do, and it's like, hey, let's call Sue and let's get a meeting set up. I don't know how we're going to do that. We're all kind of wondering what's going to take place when Sue disappears. So Sue, it's been an absolute pleasure working with you these many years. You will be missed, and we love you very much.
Sue was the first person I met when I drove into the City Hall back about 1991, and she set the tone for the entire city of Temecula. So it's been a great pleasure, and all of the jams that she got me out of, all of the meetings, all of the problems that I've had weren't even reflected on her proclamation. So there's several others that need to go on there, but
Did
anyway,
she get you out of
thank
any
so much.
legal jams?
Yeah, quite a few. Yeah. He was the legal secretary for many years and helped out.
Any city family in the audience want to say anything? See, we know we're still going to see you tomorrow, so, yeah. All right, so we need to get a picture. So, Matt, get on the other, you get on the other side. Yeah.
Just stand right in front of me.
Thank you, John.
So,
After all the help she's given me.
I love it when somebody has to help me carry all the presents.
Yeah, I was gonna get it. And that one's gonna have hand you flowers. Actually.
All right, taking a deep breath. Do we have any public comments? Here's Madam City Clerk. Are there any public comments?
Madam Mayor, there is one public speaker, Laurel Lamont.
All right, so I will read this then. A total of 30 minutes is provided for members of the public to address the City Council on items that appear within the consent calendar or a matter not listed on the agenda. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. If the speaker chooses to address the City Council on an item listed on the consent calendar or a matter not listed on the agenda, a request to speak form may be filled out and filed with the City Clerk prior to the City Council addressing public comments and the consent calendar. Once the speaker is called to speak, please come forward and state your name for the record. For all public hearing or council business items on the agenda, a request to speak form may be filed with the City Clerk prior to the City Council addressing that item. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes.
Our one and only speaker, Laurel Lamont.
Good evening.
Hi, my name is Laurel Lamont, a low-income resident of Temecula. I spoke last meeting about wanting to address the need for affordable housing. And this is my son right here. He goes to Dorothy McElhaney Middle. He's a straight A student. From that meeting, I was contacted by Chuck Washington's office. And from that conversation, I was introduced to the term NIMBYism and was told by Chuck Washington's office that there is too much NIMBYism in Temecula for the amount of affordable housing that is needed. For those that aren't aware of what NIMBYism, NIMBY is NIMBY. It is not in my backyard. By definition, a person who objects to the siting of something perceived as unpleasant or potentially dangerous in their own neighborhood, such as a landfill or hazardous waste facility. In Temecula's case, that would be affordable housing and low-income residents. NIMBYism, to me, is apathy, fear, and judgment. That I, as a low-income resident, bring some sort of criminal aspect, maybe a lower income home value or something of that nature. I am not a drug addict, never been a drug user. I am not a criminal, I never have been. I am a mom and I am a low income resident. I work here, and a lot of our community members are low income. Your Target associates, Walmart associates, your waiters, your kitchen staff, so on and so forth, your grocer in my case. I am offended by the fact that my county representative says that my city has too much NIMBYism in order to acquire the need or the amount of affordable housing that is needed. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I can address that a little bit, and if that was said, I'm sorry for you that was said also, but I can tell you in my history with this council, we've never turned down an affordable housing project that came forward for approval. And how many units of affordable housing do we have? Somebody off the top of your head?
We have over 700 units in the city.
Over 700 units in the city right now. I was just at a ribbon cutting for a total renovation of Rancho California apartments, which are affordable over off of Margarita. And we have, another project that's coming forward. Really, we've got senior housing coming forward. So I'm not sure why that was said, but this council has never rejected an affordable housing project in Temecula. Not only that, while there was redevelopment money coming forward from the state, we funded many, many, many units of affordable housing. So one of the problems right now is the state of California has taken away the only vehicle that we have to help fund affordable housing. So just imagine that you are, you want to be a landlord and you are going to build an apartment building and it's going to cost you $17 million to build it, but because it's affordable housing, you're only allowed to charge rents that are so low that you'll go bankrupt. You couldn't pay off the loan that you have taken out to build your building. So the state provided a vehicle so that cities could set aside tax increment dollars and use those dollars to help buy doors. Literally, that's what cities were doing, and that's what you're supposed to do. So if an apartment developer came along and said, I want to build affordable housing, the city of Temecula would literally help reimburse them for the cost of that affordable housing using these special tax dollars that were set aside just for that purpose. And as long as we had that vehicle to do, we spent wisely our redevelopment money. But the state took that away. So there's no longer any way that the city can subsidize builders, and no builder is going to step forward and build affordable housing. Very few. Some are established, some nonprofits are established to do that, but very few. No one can afford to build affordable housing because you cannot charge the rents to pay back the loan that you have taken out on the building that costs so much money. So that's one problem with affordable housing. And the affordable housing that we do have, unfortunately, and for you too, it is full. It is full. And that's why there's not a vacancy for you right now. So I know you met with our city staff as well, and really for people who are in that situation, you really only have a few choices. If there's nothing available right now, you can, get a roommate and maybe split the cost, but there's nothing available. You can move someplace else where you might be able to find something, but then you're not going to be near your school or your work. So it is an issue, and California is discussing, quote unquote, the housing crisis. So it's because of the legislation that was passed, or the decision by the governor, to take away all the redevelopment money. And in 2014, I had to write a $4 million check to the state of California because I was mayor that year. And they took the rest of our redevelopment money away from us. And so we would have used that money to subsidize that affordable housing just as we had in the past. And Temecula has beautiful properties of affordable housing, and there's should be no stigma attached to it. I mean, these are people, they're you and I. They're our kids who've just graduated from college, and they're working in that entry-level job, maybe as a young engineer or a teacher or a fireman or a police officer. That's who lives in affordable housing. And so for anyone to associate a stigma or anything negative with affordable housing, it's just wrong. These are our residents, and we want them to be here and to thrive and to have a happy family life and a high quality of life like everybody else in Temecula. So I understand what you're saying. And so no NIMBY would ever stop this council from doing what's right.
Madam
And
Mayor,
so, yeah.
may I just add one thing, just
Sure.
for clarification? This city council, this city is actually reviewing $12 million worth of affordable housing
Yeah.
projects right now. Now, it doesn't help Miss Lamont immediately, but we have $12 million of bond proceeds that are still remaining, and we are pledging those towards future affordable housing projects.
Yeah, I just wasn't going to say that much when I said we have things in the works right now, and that's part of it. So we will always do what's right, and it's right to provide housing for every level income of Temecula residents. And so there's your answer. Okay, and we have no more speakers? All right, any city council reports? Nobody's in the queue. Okay, then, we're going to move on to the consent calendar. All matters listed under consent calendar are considered to be routine, and all will be enacted by one roll call vote. There will be no discussion of these items unless members of the City Council request specific items be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Item number 1, waive reading of standard ordinances and resolutions. Number 2, approve the action minutes of October 10th, 2017. Number 3, approve the list of demands. Number 4, approve financial statements for the fourth quarter ended June 30th, 2017. Number 5, approve revised Exhibit A to cooperative agreement with the County of Riverside to provide fire protection, fire prevention, rescue, and medical emergency services to add staffing for Rohrpoff Fire Station number 95 and citywide inspection program. Number 6, approve the First Amendment to the purchase and installation agreement with Playcore Wisconsin, Inc., DBA, Game Time for Butterfield Stage Park Playground Equipment, replacement PW 17-10. Number 7, accept improvements and file the notice of completion for the citywide slurry seal for arterial streets, PW 15-10. Number 8, receive and file intermittent street closure of 3rd Street as part of the Truax Hotel construction project. Okay, any discussions? Not, I need a motion and a second.
Move approval.
Second.
And please cast your votes. And that shows 4 with Councilmember Stewart absent. Okay. And I'm going to recess this city council meeting to the meeting of the Temecula Community Services District.
Thank you, Madam
He's sitting
Mayor.
here waving his gavel.
I'd like to call this meeting of the Temecula Community Service District to order. Madam Clerk, let's take the roll, please.
Director Edwards?
Here.
Director Nagar?
Here.
Director Ron?
Here.
Director Stewart is absent. President Comachero?
Here. Do we have any public comment?
We do not.
Here? We'll skip that then. We have 3 items under consent calendar. Item 9, approve the action minutes of October 10th, 2017. 10, approve financial statements for the fourth quarter ended June 30th, 2017. And item 11, approve the concession services agreement with Keith Gore's DBA Good Time Rentals for concessionaire services at Harveston Lake Park.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Motion carries 4-0 with Mr. Stewart absent. Do we have a director's report tonight?
Yes, we do, Mr. President. If we have a slide. I think we have a slide. Start talking. Well, a day after your birthday, don't forget our annual Halloween Carnival on Friday, October 27th from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. at Ronald Reagan Sports Park. Games, a costume contest, jumpers, train rides, prizes, and candy are all part of this treat-filled family tradition. Then on Sunday, the 29th at 3 o'clock p.m., the Temecula Valley Youth Symphony and the City of Temecula presents the Fall Spooktacular at the CRC. All are welcome, from the young to the young at heart, for a variety of musical selections, ranging from Harry Potter to Ghostbusters. Remember, don't forget your costumes. Also, our Cultural Arts Division invites you to the last Art Off the Walls for 2017 on Friday, November 3rd from 6 to 9 p.m. at the Gallery at the Merck in the Truax Building here in Old Town. And finally, the City of Temecula proudly presents our annual Patriotic Salute to Veterans on Saturday, November 11th at 6 p.m. here at the Civic Center. The community is invited to join us for the military banner presentation and a special concert presented by the Temecula Valley Symphony as we honor our veterans. A free picnic dinner will also be served from 5 to 6 p.m. out on the grass at Town Square Park to the first 500 patrons. We look forward to seeing you there as we pay tribute to our local heroes. And that, Mr. President, concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Mr. Adams, we have a general manager's report.
Nothing further tonight, Mr. President.
Any directors' reports? Mr. Nagar?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick question. You know, we have a lot of young people in the audience today, and our local young people have been great in our high schools when it comes to being peer buddies with our special needs community. And I just wanted to ask you, and I think I ask you this every year around this time, are we getting the word out for these special Halloween events to our special needs community, and are we accommodating them, and if so, how?
The answer is yes, and we have a track record, as you know, of accommodating. And also, for our Halloween carnival, I knew you would ask this. In order to accommodate, we have a special guest pass for those who are identified as special needs, and they'll go to the front of the line. So we have them covered.
Sounds good. So if you see a child wearing one of those and they go to the front of the line, and somebody doesn't understand that, they're not cutting the line. It's that they don't understand lines and they don't understand the concept of waiting, or it may be very noisy, or it may be very chaotic, and they're hearing 50 sounds at one time and can't figure it out. This is the way we accommodate
Absolutely.
them. Thank you, sir.
You got it.
And thank all you young people.
Thank you, Mike. Any other comments?
No.
Okay, then we'll entertain a motion to adjourn to the next meeting of November 14th.
Move adjournment.
Second. Second. Anybody opposed?
Nope.
I opposed.
Passes 3-1 with Mr. Nagar opposing.
Yeah.
All right, so we are meeting now as the successor agency to the Temecula Redevelopment Agency. Let the roll call reflect that Councilmember Stewart is absent. So are there any public comments for SARDA? None. So we'll move on to the consent calendar. Number 12, receive and file financial statements for the fourth quarter ended June 30th, 2017. And that is all.
Move the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay. There we go. And that's 4 with Councilmember Stewart absent. So we will now reconvene the Temecula City Council, and we have our first items number 13 and 14 are under public hearing. So any person may submit written comments to the City Council before a public hearing or may appear and be heard in support of or in opposition to the approval of the projects at the time of the hearing. If you challenge any of the projects in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing or in written correspondence delivered to the city clerk at or prior to the public hearing. Item number 13, approve Assembly Bill AB 1600 financial reports, development impact fee expenditures. So could we have a staff report, please?
We do. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. The item before you tonight is a summary of the development impact fee expenditures for fiscal year 2016-17. Government Code Section 66006 requires an accounting of the development impact fees be provided at a public hearing every 5 years. The city has a practice of providing this report annually in order to provide for maximum transparency. Per the Government Code, development impact fee revenues must be spent within 5 years of receipt. Development impact fee revenues can only be spent on capital improvements that mitigate the impacts of the development activity. For fiscal year 16-17, a total of $1.9 million in development impact fee revenue was collected across the 8 separate development impact fee accounts. Another $53,000 of interest was earned, and a total of $4.7 million was expended. The remaining fund balance for all 8 accounts totals $4 million and is programmed for expenditure in accordance with the 2018-22 Capital Improvement Program adopted by the Council on June 13, 2017. And that concludes my report. Available
All
for
right.
questions.
Are there any questions? No questions? Okay, so I am going to open the public hearing, and do we have any speakers? We have no speakers, and I have no speakers going once. If anyone has not filed a request to speak but would like to speak on this item, you may do so at this time. And twice, and then in that case, I'm closing the public hearing, and I will entertain comments by my colleagues.
Move item 13.
Okay,
Second?
motion and a second. And item 13 passes 4 with Councilmember Stewart absent. Moving on to item 14, approve an amendment to chapters 17.06, 17.24, and 17.34 Temecula Municipal Code regarding regulating accessory dwelling units. Okay, could we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Mayor Edwards and City Council members. Before I get started with the presentation, I need to point out for the record that there is a memo placed on at your seat that explains that the ordinance that was in the staff report, attached to the staff report, has been amended. And the reason for this was that there was subsequent legislation that was approved by the governor following the Planning Commission meeting in which they recommended approval of the ordinance being presented to you this evening. The changes were done to clarify some ambiguity in the language regarding parking. Those changes do amend the ordinance that's before you. There are minor changes, and I will be addressing that within the presentation. First, need to start off by saying that the secondary dwelling units, and you'll see terms being thrown around secondary dwelling unit and accessory dwelling unit, and the reason for that is because we currently have within our ordinance regulations for secondary dwelling units, but the new legislation that has been adopted changes that to what's called an accessory dwelling unit. As I mentioned, the city currently allows second dwelling units or accessory dwelling units within the city, and they have done so for many years now, and they're regulated through the development code under 17.06.050. The state law that amended government code was Assembly Bill 2299 and Senate Bill 1069, and it required that the cities update or amend their or adopt an accessory dwelling unit ordinance that is consistent with state law, and this became effective January 1, 2017. The state law makes some changes to our existing ordinance, and that's what I'll go through with you in just a moment here. But it's also important to note that if the city does not update their ordinance based on current state law, that we may lose the ability to regulate a couple of the regulations that are existing in our current ordinance, as well as one that staff has proposed. And again, I'll go through those in just a second here. So the next two slides I'm going to show you is a table that looks just like this and lists the items that we currently have within our code, the standards for those, as well as what is being proposed. First item, you'll see it's second dwellings or accessory dwelling units are permitted use within all residential zoning districts. This doesn't change, it carries over, it's just now the name is being changed. A planning application is required currently, as well as in the proposed ordinance. A recorded covenant is also currently required, and that will continue to be required. That requires it to be recorded on title, that a second dwelling unit is on the property of a single-family dwelling parcel, and that it cannot be sold, but it may be rented. The location and setbacks change slightly, not necessarily location. Location for accessory dwelling units, they're not allowed within the actual front yard of the residential zoning districts, with the exception of the L2, or I'm sorry, the L1 zoning districts, which is a low density 1 acre minimum. Very low density is 2.5 acre, and then the hillside residential, which is a 10 acre minimum. In those zoning districts, they are allowed within the front yard. They are not allowed in the front yard, again, for those same zoning districts, with the exception of the three that I just mentioned. The asterisk there is put there because this is one of the items that we could potentially lose if we don't adopt the ordinance as required by state. In terms of the setback, currently they must meet the rear and side yard setback, which varies depending on the zoning district. Under the new regulations, there's a minimum of 5 feet for the side and rear yard setback, and that's required by state law. Minimum rental time, we don't currently have a standard in our code. We're proposing that it's a minimum of a 30-day rental, of no less than 30-day rental. Property owner must live on site. That's what currently exists, and we're proposing that that continues. Again, those last three items, we could potentially lose the ability to regulate that if we don't adopt the ordinance. In terms of parking, as I mentioned in the trailer bill that was passed that changed the ordinance, and the reason why you have a red line version on your in front of you, is the parking. We currently require one covered space for a two-bedroom unit, 2 bedrooms or less, and two covered parking spaces for 3-bedroom unit or less, or more, I'm sorry. The new standards are required by state that 1 parking space per accessory dwelling unit is the minimum, or the maximum that we can require. They've also added some parking exceptions that do not exist in our current code. The covered parking that is lost as a result of a garage conversion may be located within the setback areas. In other words, if a garage is converted into a second dwelling unit, we can require parking, but it may be located within the setback area as opposed to how we currently require it, which is within the outside of the setbacks. Also, parking is not required if any of the following conditions apply. Located within 1/2 mile of an active public transit stop. It's part of an existing primary residence or an existing accessory structure. It's located within an architectural or historical district. It's located within 1 block of a car share program, or located within an area of the city that requires on-street parking permits but does not offer the permits for an accessory dwelling unit. The last 3 bullets don't apply to the city today, but could sometime in the future. And again, that's to be consistent with state law. The project is exempt from CEQA pursuant to Public Resource Code 21080.17, which provides that CEQA does not apply to the adoption of an ordinance by a city or county to implement provisions of Section 658521 or .1 or 6582.2 of the Government Code, which pertains to accessory dwelling units. The recommendation before you tonight is to adopt an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Temecula amending chapters 17.06, 17.24, and 17.34 of the Temecula Municipal Code relating to accessory dwelling units, and finding that this ordinance is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. That completes my presentation, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? None. All right, then, in that case, I'm going to open the public hearing on this item and ask if there are any requests to speak, and there are none. So as our students file out, I will see if anyone...
8 o'clock
Yeah,
exodus.
it is 1 more minute to 8 o'clock. And if there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this item but did not fill out a request to speak, now's your time to do that. And I'm going to give you a couple of seconds. And since I don't see anybody moving towards the dais or the city clerk, I'm going to close the public hearing, and I will accept comments from council or a motion, as the case may be. I've got a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
I'll need to read the title of the ordinance.
Okay, go ahead, Peter.
This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Temecula, amending Chapter 17.06, 17.24, and 17.34 of the Temecula Municipal Code relating to accessory dwelling units, and making a finding of exemption under Public Resources Code, Section 21080.17, and that ordinance is the one that was presented to you this evening with the amendments based on state law.
Okay, thank you, Peter. And we have registered votes. There we go. And item passes 4 with Councilmember Stewart absent. Okay, moving on to City Council business. Item number 15, approve recommendation for community service funding program for fiscal year 2017-18. Could we have a staff report, please? Hi, Betsy.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm Betsy Lowry, Senior Management Analyst for the City Manager's Office. The city's community funding program grants up to $5,000 for programs and services offered by local nonprofit organizations. Compliance requires that all organizations expend city grant funding to benefit Temecula residents only. Applications are evaluated based on policies and criteria adopted by the City Council to support nonprofit organizations that offer community-wide services such as food, clothing, shelter, and medical care. Funds budgeted in the 2017-18 fiscal year, fiscal year for this grant program is $100,000. The city received and reviewed 26 grant applications from nonprofit organizations requesting $127,500. Council members Mike Nagar and Council member Jeff Camarchero are the appointed council serving on the Community Service Funding Ad Hoc Subcommittee and have reviewed each of these applications with staff. The recommendation to the City Council this evening would be to fund 22 organizations totaling $82,000. Sorry, I'm not going forward here. 22 organizations totaling $82,000. Each of these recommendations are listed in the staff report and also here on the screen on this slide and the next here. Again, the recommendation is to fund 22 nonprofit organizations totaling $82,000, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Any questions for Betsy? No? Comments?
Just briefly, what was the full amount, 100,000 that we had available?
$100,000.
So we thought it was wise to leave a balance of $18,000 to be used potentially during the year if the need arises in emergency situations and the like. So we felt very comfortable with the recommendations. If I can speak for you, Mike, as well. Agreed on what came forward, and we're happy to have some left over. So.
Okay, and no public comments. Did you have? Okay, good. Since I kind of skipped over that. All right, then we have staff recommendation. I have a motion and a second to approve.
Second.
All right, and that item passes 4 with Councilmember Stewart absent. On to item number 16. Presentation by Riverside County Flood Control and Water Conservation District for Santa Margarita River Water Quality Improvement Plan, SMR-WQIP. And good evening.
Yes, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council, staff. My name is Jason Yulee. I'm the General Manager, Chief Engineer of the Riverside County Flood Control and Water Conservation District. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today. Today we're going to be presenting an informational item on the water quality improvement plan for the Santa Margarita River watershed. And so this Santa Margarita River watershed encompasses a majority of southwest Riverside County, including the city of Temecula, and the plan is a requirement of the stormwater permit that's jointly issued to the cities, the county, and the flood control district by the San Diego Regional Water Quality Control Board. And so, if it's your pleasure, what I'd like to do is introduce our staff that have been working on this project.
Of course.
Which include Darcy Kunze, our Legislative Affairs Officer, and also Richard Boone, who is a new hire to the district. But I want to point out, although Richard is new to the district, he actually has over 20 years managing stormwater programs on behalf of the County of Orange, and he is considered one of the preeminent experts in this field within the state of California. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Darcy. Thank you.
Hi, Darcy.
Hi, what a pleasure it is to spend an hour with you for your council meeting. It was very enjoyable, so thank you for that. It's a pleasure to be here, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. Wanted to go over a little bit of background, just kind of set up the purpose of our visit and who we are. Jason introduced us, and so we're here as we're preparing this plan, the Water Quality Improvement Plan, to provide transparency and to provide some information. It is a requirement to have a public participation element to preparing this plan. So you should have also a packet in front of you with some information. It is a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, an informational document. We also have that also in the back for the public to also pick up, and also some public participation forms should they want to ask any questions or provide any additional information. Those forms are at the back of the room as well. We want to also build some working relationships. It's been a pleasure to work with your public works staff, your public works director, Patrick Thomas, and new hired water quality engineer in your public works department, Mr. Stuart Kuhn, who's been avidly also working on this. So that's been great as well. So we're here to provide this presentation for you. Richard Boone will go over some of the technical aspects of the plan, and then we'll have an opportunity to answer any questions should that be needed at that time. So with that being said, thank you again for having us here tonight. Richard Boone. Thank you, Darcy. Mr. Boone, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Edwards, City Council members. Richard Boone, Senior Flood Control Planner with Riverside County Flood Control and Water Conservation District. So very much appreciate having the opportunity to talk to you and to provide you with an update on our water quality improvement plan. This is a plan that is nearing completion, but it's been the subject of a 2-year development process. As Darcy mentioned, it's a process that has been informed by public participation and also oversight by a consultation committee made up of individuals representing key constituencies within the community, both economic, social, and environmental interests. And it's a program that ultimately will lay out a schedule of deliverables and milestones that we will have to attain over the next approximately 20 years. So as Jason mentioned, this is a plan that is focused very much on the Santa Margarita River. This is a watershed area that covers 742 square miles. The area of keen interest to us are the urban areas, the 3 major cities there, Waldemar, Murrieta, and Temecula. The plan is one of 10 water quality improvement plans that are being developed across this area of Southern California. And while it is a mandate, it is a regulatory requirement, it is also an opportunity for us to apply our own expertise, pick the issues and the conditions that are of greatest concern to the community, and really chart our own destiny with a regulatory compliance exercise. So as I say, the plan and our interest in the Santa Margarita River really is very much focused on addressing the adverse impacts that can arise in stream systems when you have the imprint of urbanization on a landscape. The slide here shows the key changes that occur in our surface water systems, the hydrologic changes with urbanization, the changes in the volume, timing, and velocities of runoff, rainfall runoff, the channel modification that often occurs, either excessive erosion or engineering to ensure that the channel remains stable under these higher levels of hydrologic duress. Pollution that often accompanies water flowing out of the urban landscape and an ultimately degraded ecology. And the slide there shows you some nuisance algal growth on the downstream end of a storm drain outfall. And then the causes, why do we incur these adverse impacts? Principally imperviousness, where you have a landscape prior to development that absorbs rainfall we replace it with a landscape of roads and driveways and parking lots and rooftops where rainfall runoff, instead of soaking into the ground, runs straight off. We build very hydraulically efficient drainage systems to convey that runoff quickly and safely out of the urban landscape. And then we also encounter disposal, either deliberate or sometimes inadvertent. And then obviously a major feature of or what can be a significant feature in the residential areas, non-stormwater discharges, principally excess irrigation runoff. So this is I'll just quickly, whoops, too quickly. So the responsible agencies that have convened and collaborated and cooperated to prepare this plan are the major cities, obviously of the watershed, with Riverside County Flood Control District as the principal permittee. This collaborative and cooperative approach really is very much a feature in the state of California of the municipal response to this Clean Water Act obligation to deal with urban runoff. And it's an approach that enables cost sharing. It enables the partners to share in the costs of program development, but also in some of the key implementation actions that arise, such as the science and monitoring and the public education components. The watershed planning exercise that will conclude at the end of December has been a phased development process. We use the terms B1, B2, B3 to describe the various sections of the plan that corresponds to the regulatory obligations in the permit. But it has been an exercise of looking at water quality in the watershed, conducting an assessment, prioritizing issues, as I mentioned, focusing on those things that we think are most important to us, the local agencies in the watershed, and identifying candidate management strategies. Set goals. We have developed our schedules, and at the moment we're finishing B4, the monitoring and science plan, and the adaptive management component, with a view to getting this plan completed in the first and submitted to the state for approval or acceptance in the first week of January. The conditions that we're looking for the plan to address, first and foremost, I bring to your attention the term eutrophication, which is always a good term for middle of the night on the middle of the week. But this is a term that discusses the impacts to receiving waters that can occur from excess nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus, principally from fertilizers, that can really have a profound effect on water quality. But we also recognize that in addition to our highest priority water quality condition, we still got work to do on toxicity, which can be intermittently observed across the watershed. Some changes in the physical habitat of channels, trash, regrettably, and then incidences of elevated bacteria concentrations that can pose a threat to water contact recreation. So the plan, in essence, is focused on water quality standards, realizing the economic, environmental, and recreational uses that are afforded to us by surface water systems. We're going to get there by doing the things that we're currently doing to protect water quality, but perhaps now moving towards more targeted implementation of actions, some program expansion, and some further development of some of the initiatives that are already in place and are being managed by your city staff. I think we're also contemplating that there may be additional city programs, perhaps in the midterm, an enhanced street sweeping effort, a further investment in low impact development management practices, and then perhaps also projects that are coordinated and collaborated, probably most likely with the district on a regional scale, putting in regional drainage infrastructure that has an ecological and a water quality benefit. The types of practices, another term of art, best management practices, that these programs of protection revolve around. We're looking to get covered storage in the urban landscape, preventing rainwater runoff coming into contact with potential pollutant sources, looking to create pervious surfaces where we currently have impervious surfaces, looking for opportunities, low-impact development opportunities to create landscape features that will accept and infiltrate excess runoff, hoping to continue our public education and outreach program, looking to encourage more or less chemically dependent landscaping, street sweeping I mentioned, and then ultimately probably some collaborative channel rehabilitation projects. So our progress to date, as I say, we refer to the various components of the report as B2, B3, B4, and B5. We've done the prioritization. We've picked our strategies. We've done this through public consultation and consultation committee oversight. We have our goals and strategies. We're finishing the monitoring and assessment and adaptive management components. And in the first week of January, the finished plan will be provided to the state for acceptance. So in summary, we're preparing a WQIP, a water quality improvement plan for the Santa Margarita River watershed. It's required for municipal permit compliance. It is focused on what we call our priority water quality conditions of concern, which we, as the local agencies, and again through the consultative process, have established for ourselves. It establishes enforceable goals and milestones. We see the plan evolving over the course of its implementation. And while we have not yet identified the full costs of implementation, of compliance, of plan implementation, I think it's fair to say that we anticipate costs of water quality protection enhancement increasing in the future. And with that, I'm very happy to take any questions.
Mike, do you have a question?
Thank you, and a very good report. I appreciate it. It's a noble cause to clean that water before it gets in our rivers and out to the oceans. Regional water quality is putting a lot of restrictions on us and insisting more and more water be cleaned more thoroughly and more efficiently. And of course, all those costs get passed along the line. As you just kind of alluded to, there's a cost of compliance, and you really haven't worked it out yet. My question, though, is there was some talk in the past of projects that didn't have the footprint or the ability for one reason or another to be able to mitigate its water quality requirement, that there was a talk of a mitigation bank or being able to purchase into off-site mitigation somewhere. So my question is twofold. Is that being worked on, and should that have a place in this plan?
Yes, it is. It is being worked on. I think what the councilman is referring to is what we refer to as an alternative compliance provision or option for land development. So if a project comes in through your planning approval process and the footprint doesn't allow, or the project design doesn't allow for land to be set aside for these water quality mitigated features, could the proponent make a contribution to an off-site or an in-lieu project? And the answer is, to your question, is yes. WRCOG, Western Region Riverside Council of Governments, is working on creating an alternative compliance structure that would enable a project proponent to do just that. And that will become part of the plan at some point next year.
So thank you. And so you do see that at some point amending the plan to fold that in?
Yes, very definitely.
Great, thank you very much.
Any other questions, Matt?
I've been out of the watershed business with Santa Margarita for a few years, but what happened, where are we with the NNE model that was being done for the lower watershed, and how does that relate to all of this?
So the nutrient model was an exercise in looking at what are the appropriate water quality endpoints. What is the chemistry that we're trying to achieve in a number of channel segments, and also the estuary that is going to be protective of water quality and protective of the ecological uses. So that modeling exercise is at the core of this WQIP. So all of the work that was done forms the basis for the load reductions that we've calculated we need to achieve over the next 20 years.
Okay, and then brings me to my next question on the monitoring side of this. So I guess the biggest challenge with most of these plans is monitoring, right? And I know we struggled for years in other watersheds like San Diego to try and be able to characterize the spatial and temporal variability accurately and be able to realize that what's being done for best management practices actually has an impact on water quality, and be able to sort of come up with some sort of value for those BMPs. What does your management or monitoring plan look like today? I mean, how rigorous are we? Are we doing it, or are we just using, by default sort of modeling activities, or what are you guys working on now?
So the monitoring element is still being developed. I think it will ultimately be a combination of indirect and direct measurements or metrics. And indirect, I mean indicators of program verification, that we've taken certain steps, that there is a portion of the landscape that is now subject to low impact development, but then also, in addition to verification, validation, taking measurements of water chemistry at key locations throughout the system, and ensuring that we are starting to see those changes in chemistry, and ultimately with this plan starting to see measurable reductions in dry weather flows. So I think the monitoring program will be comprehensive, and it will enable us to properly evaluate the program and ultimately adaptively manage it.
So does that include long-term monitoring stations too, not just grab samples, but setting up long-term monitoring?
We're picking locations in the watershed where there will be long-term water quality monitoring, both of dry weather flows and storm events. Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Anything else? No? So, presentation. So this is a receive and file, I'm assuming. Yeah, it's for information purposes only, and it's been very informative. So we know that we're all subject to the federal water quality guidelines, and so, help us. So thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, if I could add one other item to this presentation, was part of the requirements for this preparation of this plan was to have the opportunity for public input and public participation, which is one of the reasons for this presentation. And then also, if I could ask Darcy, there's a consultation committee that was formed to also provide public input into the preparation of this plan. If you could explain that as well.
Sure, no problem. As part of the requirement for the plan, there's a consultation committee that has required members. One is a member of the building industry. One is a member of the water board staff for the San Diego region. One is from the environmental community. And then we had some at-large members. One was from the Wine Growers Association and the Farm Bureau. So those were kind of the 5 business elements and public elements that we had. They were all participating in putting the plan together and making recommendations on highest water quality priorities and other recommendations as we move forward. So they will also be, they've concluded their business. We actually just had our 3rd and final consultation committee meeting to put the plan together last Tuesday across the way in your conference center. But they will be reconvened as we move forward through the adaptive management process, and if there's amendments or changes to the plan, that's also a requirement to have them be reconvened to ratify and give input to any other changes to the plan moving forward. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Darcy. Anything else? Pat? No one? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 17, establish the Southwest Riverside County Energy Authority, SRCEA, Joint Powers Authority, and approval of various agreements to enable the city to purchase solar-generated electricity from the Santa Margarita Ecological Reserve Solar Power Generating Facility. Can we have a staff report, please?
Oh, hang on. I'm going to have to recuse myself from this item.
So Mayor Pro Tem Ron is recusing himself. So is he leaving the room?
Yes,
Yes.
he needs to leave the room, and the basis for that is, as you know, he was the director of research at the Santa Margarita Ecological Reserve at the time this project began, so he had some input into it, and he's continuing to consult and will continue to consult with some of the principals involved in this project. So we thought it best that he not participate.
And goodbye. Okay. All right, now can we have a staff report, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, the item you're considering this evening is related to the power purchase agreement the council approved in May of last year. As you recall, at that time, the city entered into a 20-year power purchase agreement with SMR Research One, the entity constructing a solar power generating facility on property within the Santa Margarita Ecological Reserve in partnership with San Diego State University, allowing for the production of renewable energy as well as habitat restoration and research. This evening, the council is recommended to take the appropriate steps to form the Southwest Riverside County Energy Authority, a joint powers authority with the city of Lake Elsinore, where a similar item 2 weeks ago, with the city of Lake Elsinore, who approved a similar item a couple of weeks ago. The JPA will allow Lake Elsinore to also purchase power from SMR Research One. There are 3 actions associated with this item. Number 1, adopting the resolution that approves the joint powers agreement which forms the Southwest Riverside County Energy Authority. Number 2, appointing 2 council members to the JPA board. And number 3, adopting the resolution approving the various agreements between the JPA and SMR Research One to replace similar agreements between the city and SMR Research One approved in May of 2016 upon termination of the May 2016 agreements, and authorizing the city manager approve other necessary agreements. It should be noted that the joint powers agreement designates the city manager as an alternate JPA board member. The council may approve all 3 actions with one motion, provided the motion includes appointing 2 council members to the JPA board. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Any questions? None? Any public comments? None? Okay, then we can move into discussion. We have to conduct some business here, so we need to appoint 2 members of the city council with the city manager acting as alternate. You can act as alternate. Okay.
Madam Mayor, I assume, Peter, that Matt cannot be one of those members, is that correct? It's unfortunate, but okay.
Yeah, it is. Does anyone have an interest?
I think it should be the mayor and the absent council member.
You see how this works? Yeah, don't laugh back there.
That's a motion.
All right, I'll do it.
Second.
Okay. So go ahead and.
No, let's be clear, the absent council member is Councilmember Stewart.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yes.
Yeah, he'll be thrilled.
Right.
Somebody seconded that. So they better push their button.
I'm seconding it, I'm trying.
Madam Mayor?
Sir?
If that appears to be the consensus, what you can do is approve the staff recommendation appointing the mayor and Councilmember Stewart, and you can do it all in one motion.
Yes, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So there's the motion again. And go ahead and cast your votes. That'll teach him to not be here.
It's true.
And that is 3 yeses. Mayor Pro Tem Ron has abstained, and Councilmember Stewart, our newest member of the Southwest JPA for Energy, is not here. So isn't he going to be surprised?
Actually, Councilmember Ron will be on the record as not being present.
Okay, he's out of the room, and that's a big surprise waiting for Councilmember Stewart when he returns home. Okay, on to item number 18, Presentation regarding the city's homeless outreach efforts, adopt an administrative procedure regarding the removal of unlawful campsites, bulky items, and personal property, introduce ordinance regulating conduct in order to protect the health, safety, and quality of life of persons in Temecula. So I'm going to give a brief explanation on this too. The city adopted a homeless policy called Responsible Compassion to deal with a growing number of homeless, as is present in cities all across the nation. In fact, it's an epidemic that hasn't been seen since the Great Depression, homeless individuals. So Responsible Compassion, it has 3 separate parts in ways that we interact and deal with our homeless population. And the first one, the first leg of the 3-legged stool is that we provide through Community Mission of Hope services and intake for a special program for any homeless individual who would like to work their way back to self-sufficiency. It's at no cost, it's free of charge, and really the only requirement of the homeless person is that they show a steady progress towards self-sufficiency. And services provided will cover anything that person needs. And utilizing key partners, the County of Riverside, Riverside County Health, Department of Social Services, Community Mission of Hope, and their support team. So the first prong is to reach out and make sure that any homeless person that wants to get back to self-sufficiency has the services and the support that they need to enable them, but not to empower them, but not to enable them. The second prong of the 3-pronged approach for responsible compassion is community education. Because for many, many years, people have felt that you're helping homeless people by giving them, handing them money or providing food for them. And we know now that is absolutely the opposite of what is true. When you hand food to a homeless person or money, most of the time, and we know through documentation and interaction, that those 2 items turn into drugs, because that is often the main cause of homelessness is drug abuse. So sometimes you think you're helping and you aren't. And the city of Temecula, residents live in Temecula are very, very generous, and they want to help. And the easiest and quickest way that they have felt to help was to give money. So we have reached out with a very comprehensive education campaign, letting our residents know that giving money or food to homeless individuals really does hurt them. It doesn't help them. It enables them to maintain that same lifestyle and continue to live in filth and very unhealthy and unsafe conditions. So that seems to have been working. We've gotten the word out to Temecula residents. There have even, because Temecula residents are so generous, there have been cases that we have picked up homeless persons soliciting or panhandling on the off-ramps. And recently, within the last couple of months, one of them was a gentleman, and he had actually had a home in Hemet. He wasn't homeless. He had a house in Hemet, and he took the bus to Temecula to panhandle because people are so generous here. You can make more money panhandling in Temecula than you could in Hemet. And we know that to be the case, in multiple situations. So community education was the second piece, and instead of giving money or food to a homeless individual, we've asked our residents to be generous by donating to the Community Mission of Hope that then turns around and provides the services that homeless individuals need. It empowers them to get back to self-sufficiency. And then the third key piece is for those individuals who choose to remain homeless or choose to live outdoors, it is not against the law to do so, but they must obey the same laws and rules that all Temecula residents obey. So they can't be drunk in public or be in possession of drugs or using drugs or selling drugs or urinating in public or trespass. And so to deal with those situations, the city of Temecula is very fortunate that we have been able to hire 4 full-time specially trained police officers, when we call them our HOT team, our homeless outreach team, to work with our homeless population. And not to be punitive or to stalk them or to punish them, but to build relationships with them, hoping that by building that trust, that homeless individual will find the courage to ask for the help that is readily available to them for free. And to protect the other 114,000 residents of Temecula, we do enforce the law on homeless individuals just as we would on regular residents. So our police officers are vigilant, as they always are, around the city of Temecula, which is one of the safest places to live in the country. And I think our homeless individuals who continue to live in that lifestyle know that our officers are there to help, but they're also there to enforce. And the program is working. We've seen a direct impact to the numbers of people who have joined the program and are receiving help, or those who have asked for transportation to go back home to live with a relative or a brother, or in some cases they've just gone back home because it's a young person whose family lives right here in Temecula. So we think that the program is working, and we have seen the results of that in that cities around us, our neighboring cities, have joined in a coalition so that we all can address homelessness in a similar way. Because we don't want to address homelessness in Temecula just to simply drive those people to Murrieta or Lake Elsinore or Hemet or any other city. We really do want to help those people. So Community Mission of Hope has been instrumental and allowed us to do all of these things. And we're very grateful for their partnership. So I've introduced to you the actual program, Responsible Compassion, and the structure of the program. And so we have staff members here. So I think Robin is here and Erica's here.
Yeah, Madam Mayor.
Here.
If I can, thank you, and thank you for that important background.
And Kevin.
That's right. Thanks for that important background. Actually, tonight's staff report will be presented by two familiar faces, Erica Russo, who oversees our Human Services Division, and Robin Gilliland, the city's Homeless Outreach Liaison. So with that, Erica.
Thank you, Kevin. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Tonight we're going to be providing you with a presentation and overview of the city's quality of life and homeless outreach initiatives. This evening we'll be covering 3 items. The first is a review of a proposed administrative procedure. The second is a review of the proposed ordinance. And then finally, Robin will be providing you with an overview of our current homeless outreach initiatives. The administrative procedure guides the enforcement of Chapter 9.75 of one of the proposed ordinances this evening, which prohibits encampments and the storing of personal property on public property. And it's important to note that the goal of this administrative procedure is to provide guidance for staff to enable them to implement this ordinance with both respect for the people whose property may be impacted or may be removed from public property, as well as the community that has a legitimate need for protection of public health, safety, and welfare. The administrative procedure also preserves the city's public spaces for their intended use and enjoyment by the public, and it prevents the negative public health and safety impacts that can be caused by, you'll see some photos later, by these encampments and debris. It requires notification and outreach to affected individuals, and it also provides for the storage and disposition of property which is removed from public space. The key provisions of the administrative procedure are that staff working with community partners will develop an outreach strategy for all occupied encampments. Occupants will be given notice to vacate in conjunction with this outreach and services. The process will be expedited if there's an immediate threat to public health or safety. Personal property which is removed from the site will be stored for 90 days at the Pujol Street location, which is going to be administered by Community Mission of Hope. And information on the retrieval of the property will be posted both at the site where the cleanup was conducted, as well as provided to the individuals affected wherever possible. To give you some sense of the scope of the problem, I know sometimes when we talk about quote-unquote homeless encampments, what people are envisioning is an occupied space. But the reality is a lot of the times when we talk about encampments, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about largely abandoned debris, much of which poses significant threats to public health in the way of disease vectors, pollution, chemical contaminants, and physical fire or flood hazards. This picture and this one were both taken at sites off of 79 South, which have since been remediated, and 3 40 cubic yard dumpsters were collected and removed from these sites. These sites are the properties that were adjacent to Ridge Park Drive, and as you'll hear a little bit more later, over 45 tons of debris were removed here. Right now, staff is closely monitoring the recent hepatitis outbreak, and one of our principal concerns and part of the urgency of being able to address sites like this is the potential to spread disease. The hepatitis A outbreak is currently in San Diego and Los Angeles counties. 600 individuals have been sickened by this outbreak at this point, and over 19 have died as a result of it. The ordinance has 4 main components. It amends the section which prohibits aggressive solicitation. It adds 2 chapters, one which prohibits certain conduct on public property, and a second which prohibits the storage of personal property on public property. And then the 4th item is it just repeals 2 items which are now included in the new chapters. The amendment to section 9.65.060 prohibiting aggressive solicitation simply expands the areas in which solicitation is prohibited to include public restrooms. These other areas you'll notice are already covered in the existing ordinance. So we've basically just added public restrooms to one of the protected spaces where solicitation is prohibited. The addition of Chapter 9.70 will prohibit certain conduct on public property, and basically this is conduct which would interfere with or in some other way negatively impact the public's ability to enjoy public space or public health, safety, or welfare. This includes unlawful camping, obstructing the free passage along public ways, including streets, sidewalks, and parks, and public urination and defecation. The addition of Chapter 9.75 would prohibit the storage of personal property on public property, and this is really the focus of the administrative procedure we were just discussing. It prohibits the storage of the personal property as well as erecting barriers or attachments. So that would include chains, ropes, and other devices used to, create an encampment. It also provides for the notification of and outreach to any individuals who would be impacted by the property that is stored on public property, and it provides for the removal, storage, and disposition of that property per the administrative procedure we discussed earlier. Finally, the repeal of Chapter 9.02 and Section 10.08.080 simply repeals 2 items which are now covered in the new chapters which would be added. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them now. Otherwise, Robin will be providing you with an overview of our current outreach initiatives.
Any questions? No? Okay, Robin, you're up.
Great. Thank you, Erica. As many of you are aware, the City of Temecula takes this complex socioeconomic challenge quite seriously. We've taken the lead on crafting the comprehensive approach to mitigating the problem of homelessness. The city understands the concerns and frustrations of its residents when it comes to safeguarding the high quality of life enjoyed here. As part of the tremendous effort put forth to help those experiencing homelessness, the city and many community partners and stakeholders, some of whom are not listed here, have worked collaboratively to provide as many resources as necessary. On September 25th, our HOT team, our sergeant, and our lieutenant spent much of that day conducting outreach to those experiencing homelessness within our city. Dozens of local and county agencies provided options for service. Thankfully, many accepted the assistance in the way of reunification with family, both locally and out of the area. A few entered rehab, and yet more were housed. None of this would have been possible without the hard work and dedication of our officers and stakeholders. This event will be replicated in the near future. On our public safety front, these are dedicated men who work tirelessly to reach out to those in need. First and foremost, their mission is to offer help and resources to those experiencing homelessness. They will connect people to drug and alcohol resources, assist them with connecting with family, and they work very closely with all veterans organizations. Often they are asked to do presentations to support the city at community events, which includes education to many of our local businesses and residents. And finally, if they find a person who is engaging in criminal activity, obviously appropriate enforcement will be taken. I would be remiss if I did not mention the support of our local fire department personnel. The calls for service to 911 with our transient population has increased, and they continue to provide excellent service to all. As part of the mayor's plan, we really continue to work on our community education. We work to really understand the best practices, and we continue to add new elements to this initiative. We proudly attend chamber events to share with local businesses our vision on how to truly help those in need. We've started a local task force just to focus on Temecula and Murrieta. We are partnering with our local school districts to find families living in cars. We provide pamphlets with local resources, and we have a poster program as indicated above. The TemeculaCA.gov website is a great source for up-to-date information. This was alluded to earlier, but not only does the city coordinate and clean up areas of debris on public land, we work quite closely with private property owners as well. We work with outside agencies to assure those occupying those locations are offered resources. As part of our update tonight, I would like to thank the amazing team here tonight and Mike Morey for putting this video together to show all the amazing work that happens daily. Before we move forward, if I might, I'd like to introduce some of our team members. Madam Mayor, if that's okay. I'd like to introduce our police chief, Lisa McConnell, Lieutenant Spivak, Sergeant Gaskins, the entire team back there of deputies, Todd Johnson, Jarrett McClellan, Chris Ibrahim, and Rick Donahoe.
They're all hiding in the back of the room.
I know, of course they are. With the fire department, I think there's more than Matt back there, but Matt Hayes.
Yeah, they're hiding in the back of the room too.
We have Temecula Code Enforcement. We have Tom and Nadia and Maria. Couldn't do anything without them. I don't know if our park rangers are here, but yep, there's Sergio and of course Phil. They are instrumental. Within the Community Services Department, there's myself and Mike, who did the videography, and then our newest member of our team, Lacey, who works with me. Public Works, we have Rodney Tidwell. Couldn't do it without Rodney. And then a few of our community stakeholders that are here. We have Community Mission of Hope. I believe Pastor Scott Treadway's here, and Megan, who's the new director of Community Mission of Hope. I don't see Allison, but we love you too. From Project Touch, Ann is here. Ann always answers her phone for our hot team. We love Ann. Riverside Recovery Resource. Desmond and Paul are in the back there. They have been instrumental in our successes. And Temecula Noon Rotary Club have started a homeless solutions committee, and Jared is here. So we're thrilled to have them as part of our team as well. So at the conclusion, we're going to show you a video, kind of a wrap-up of kind of what we've been doing, and be available for questions after that.
Thank you, Robin. that's really good. Thank you. So does anyone have any questions of either of these two ladies? No? Then we have Matt.
Just one quick one. You know, I noticed on a couple of slides earlier, you list all the partners that are working right now, but I'm not seeing anything from the county.
They have been they're coming out here more and more often. As part of the outreach day, we really made some connections, and we have had actually Elizabeth from DPSS. She's been here for the last month going out with our hot team.
Okay, great.
So, yeah.
Any other questions? Mike.
First, thank you for a very comprehensive presentation. Very well done and very understandable. Are we doing anything in the program that is proactive? In other words, you mentioned Ridge Park. You mentioned you took out 3 40-yard bins. Did I get that right, or was it more? 3 40-yard bins. That's a lot of trash. It should have never been allowed to accrue like that. So are we going, and I believe that's in the county, correct? Or was that in the city limits of Temecula?
Yeah, it's in the hills west of Old Town here. That it was part of all that.
Ridge Park is in the city. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. No, I got.
79 South is in the county.
Got it. Because got it. Okay, yeah, made the connection. So we took out 3 40-yard bins from the Ridge Park area.
Yep.
Actually, we took out 45 tons from
45
Ridge Park.
tons.
From Temecula Parkway, we took out the 3 40-yard bins.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
It's a lot. So I guess back to my question. Are we being reactive? Are we being proactive? Are we going out to the areas? First, are we being proactive? You got that. Also, are we regularly going out? Even when we find that there's a camp, and it's not a very large camp, but are we posting and abating regularly? So that's 2 questions.
Yes.
Yes, sir. So we, our hot team officers are in the field, and they're doing between 50 and 60 checks of different areas where people are typically found. At that point, they will start the process. Of course, the process depends on whose property it's on and how quickly that can be abated. If it's flood control property, we're working with them on getting the agreement finalized so we can do the 72 hours and get in and clean up. If it's private property, we work with code enforcement closely so they can start the notification process. So we have to stay obviously within the legal bounds of notification, but as soon as one is found that is active, we are absolutely going after it within the bounds of the law. If it's just a debris area, that can be abated much quicker.
And so, Mike, yes, they are actively looking in those places where homeless encampments do occur.
Thank you. And my next question is, what is the status of the joint agreement with flood? And with no reflection on our staff, why is it taking so long? We just sat here and heard a water quality presentation when we got one of the most water quality, heinous impacts of water quality is occurring on their own property, in which we're willing to abate, and we haven't got the agreement yet?
The council approved it 2 weeks ago.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
So
it's done.
our part is done, and I don't know if Pat knows if it's been executed on their end.
We haven't gotten it back from the county yet. Their legal staff may have wanted to add some tweaks to the agreement, so we're waiting for response from their legal staff.
Got it. And my next question, and probably my last, is we hear a continuing refrain that, well, it's private property, we don't have jurisdiction, we got to get property owners' permission, and we all know that that's true. But we now know where this is all occurring. It occurs regularly. And can we just, and maybe we can talk about this more at comment section, but can we just get all the permissions that we need? Can that be part of this plan and this effort? That we are going to go out and get all the permissions we need, so we never have to give that excuse again. I mean, we know where this is occurring. They're not camping, or the homeless are not camping right out here on Mercedes in front of City Hall. They're not camping over here on a lot in Old Town. They're going in areas that are obscure and hard to get to, and we know where they're at.
Mm-hmm. And if it's private property, Mike, we can get a form signed from
I know that. My point is, we know that. What are we doing to get those forms? All of them now. Let's take the next 6 months, get all the forms, so that excuses, for the most part, never proffered again. Can we fold that into this? We can talk more about this during discussion, but right now it's a question. Can we fold that into this program?
It has been.
Yes, absolutely. You have the authority to go to each property owner where you think there's a likelihood that that's going to occur. You don't even need to put it into your ordinance. You just need to have them sign a form saying, I give you consent to go onto the property, clean it up whenever you see a problem being there. You do it for graffiti. The Sheriff's Department does it for trespass. They give it authority in advance to go on and arrest people for trespass. So those are all the types of things that can be done, and as I understand it, are in the process of actually being done. Now, if a property owner says, no, I don't want you going onto my property, then code enforcement begins the public nuisance abatement process, and we go through the process, and if they still say no, then we go and we get an abatement warrant from the court and go on and take care of all this, and then go back and collect all of the expenses that have been incurred in undertaking this action.
2 follow-up questions, Peter. If you can't see it from the right-of-way, how do we start that process? Number one, we know where the encampments are occurring, and when they're occurring on private property we don't control. How can we begin that process if we're not allowed to enter the property and we can't see it from somewhere else?
I won't talk about how the police know what's going on, but if we believe that something is occurring on private property and the property owner won't let us on, the city is entitled to go to court to get what's called an inspection warrant. So if you can see it from the road, you can start the process. If you can't see it from the road, we can get a warrant to go on and inspect the property.
My next question, thank you, Peter. My next question is, if there's an encampment occurring on private property, there may be reluctance by a property owner to want to give us carte blanche, if you will, to go on their property and post for abatement because they may be concerned we're going to bill them. What are we doing about that? Or are we doing anything about that? So, for instance, you got illegal encampments, it's on private property. If he says, sure, you can go on my property and abate, but he's expecting a bill, he may not be so willing to let the city go onto his property. So are we charging owners for abatement? How are we handling that?
I'll let the staff talk about what has actually occurred, but from a purely legal perspective, the city has the authority to bill the property owner whether they agree or not. The only thing that an agreement does from the property owner to go on is it speeds the process up. Code enforcement can go through the whole process, give them all the notifications, get the abatement warrant, and they're going to be charged for the abatement. And I'll let the staff talk about how that consent processes work.
So my 2 questions was, how do we, if we don't have access to the property and it's not viewable from an adjacent property of the right-of-way, how do we go in there and inspect it and post it for abatement? That's question 1. And question 2, are we billing property owners when we do that? And if so, what's their incentive to let us on the property?
Tom would, Luke?
Yeah, I think Peter mentioned it. It's basically the standard nuisance abatement process. We aren't working with any property owners and billing them on a regular basis to go on their property with a private agreement of some types. And there is, like you said, not very much incentive for them to let us on the property if they know we're going to bill them. But then we would engage the nuisance abatement process. We would get the warrant, as Peter mentioned, and we would go on the site and do it, whether the property owner liked it or not. And then we would lien the property for the cost of that cleanup.
Okay. Thank you.
Mike, if I can tell you, there have been instances and near Butterfield Stage and in the creek bed to the east of that, there were a couple of encampments that were on private property. And in that case, we simply contacted the owner and they worked with us to get everything cleared out. So I don't know that we've had any owners refuse to allow us to go in.
No, just point. We're not private property cleanups are the financial responsibility of the private property owner. So we haven't got into the practice of footing the bill for those cleanups. To answer your first question, with the agreement that this council approved some months ago. We appropriated an amount of money related to the flood control agreement that will allow us to advance funds for cleanup, but to be reimbursed by flood control when it comes to flood control properties. So those public properties we will be reimbursed for, but we're not in the practice of, for example, some of the photos that were shown was the large ambient community in the west of the hills where a good amount of those encampment and cleanups occurred, and they paid 100%. Please confirm that for that abatement of that property.
100%. Yep.
If I could add, Councilman, you also asked about how staff being proactive, and I didn't want this point to be lost. You know, our outreach and our community education efforts aren't just aimed at the homeless, but they're aimed at residents, they're aimed at property owners and businesses. And so as we're getting the word out and we're meeting with various groups, we're letting them know what the standard is, what our practices are, what the expectation is, what are the rules, the regulations, and et cetera. So there's a very active program in terms of reaching out to property owners and business in the business community as well.
Thank you. Just in general, why wouldn't we just send out a mass mailing to property owners in Temecula where encampments occur? I mean, they're not occurring in residential neighborhoods, so we know that. So we're not talking about every house in every neighborhood, but we know where they occur. Is there any reason why we're just not pursuing these permission letters en masse so we can just do what we need to do? In other words, so that excuse is never or seldom proffered again, I guess is my point.
No, there's no reason we can't explore. I think we know where those frequent spots are occurring citywide. I think to some degree, Councilman, we're doing what you asked us to do. For example, on the south end of town, it's been revealed to us there where flood control Temecula Creek property ends, private property picks up as you go east of Butterfield Stage Road. That has been a challenge for us. But months and months ago, we began the task of identifying who those property owners are, mailing letters to them, putting them on notice so we could get those permissions. So that's just one example, and I'm sure the HOT officers are finding and they're visiting those frequent spots. If we don't already have 602 letters on file or we don't have those in our database, I'm pretty certain we're doing that. Can we do more? Possibly, and we absolutely can explore that. But I think there is a proactive measure that's going on in those areas that are problematic. And I think the other thing I want to mention, I don't want it to get lost here, is that we added 2 more police officers to this effort. So a total of 4 homeless outreach, dedicated 7 days a week. We're covering every day of the week. And these men are also visiting abated encampment cleanup sites. So to your point about making sure that they don't get rehabitated, I think those are some of the hot spots that these crews are going back to citywide throughout every week and revisiting.
Thank you, Mr. Adams, for a very thorough answer and a very adequate answer. I appreciate that. One other follow-up, if I may, Madam Mayor, maybe City Attorney can address this. In areas such as the creek beds, the undercrossings where appropriate, do we have a prohibition of using drone technology? Can we view those areas by sending a drone in and flying the region and having a look? These areas are, what I'm talking about, are not very accessible by foot, but that's the exact reason why they're being, in some cases, re-inhabited. Is there any prohibition to doing that?
There are a number of federal prohibitions on drones. I don't think they would apply in this situation, but the city does not have a policy that prohibits the use of drones.
Okay, thanks.
And we have discussed that in areas where we know it's difficult for people to go in and inspect. We've talked about that, so we know that is an option.
But it's a commercial license, not a passive recreational use, so there's a whole other layer of FAA oversight on that. So.
Right.
Jeff.
Thank you.
One area, though, where I say we don't have a policy involving drones, the Sheriff's Department has to be concerned about search and seizure laws because they don't want to use a drone and all of a sudden find out that there's a major drug operation going on and not be able to use that evidence in dealing with a criminal prosecution.
Jeff?
Aaron, you talked about the 602 letters. Do they have a sunset date on them, or are they good in perpetuity?
They expire.
No sunset date?
A year.
No, they expire, right?
It's a year.
They expire in a year?
They have to be renewed every year.
It's a year.
Do we have a policy of aggressively renewing them?
Yes.
Do we know each letter when it expires so that we're getting
Yes,
to
there
those
is a
property owners?
database. Yes, there's a database, and I've been assisting with keeping on top of that as well.
So hopefully we don't let them lapse. Okay, thank you.
It's almost an automatic
If I may piggyback on
Sure.
Councilmember Comachero, can we just put a clause in them that they automatic renew, so we don't have to follow them up? And unless, of course, they're withdrawn.
If I may, you were talking before about what's the incentive for property owners. That may make it more difficult. If you're the property owner and we're asking you, you're not going to have a say after this, that
Fair
may
enough.
make it more difficult.
Fair enough.
The only other thing I would say to that, I'm not aware of any departments that have them automatically renewed, so there's probably some good reason for going back and getting them renewed each year.
And it's actually a good thing to go back to maintain that face-to-face relationship with the property owners, for the officers. And at one point, Rotary Club of Temecula had volunteered to do the 602 letters, but it really does have to be done by a police officer so they can answer technical and legal questions at the time. So, and they carry them with them at all times.
Thank you.
So,
Madam Mayor, if I could add just one thing. Someone mentioned proactive steps and preventative measures, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention also there is a good amount of homeless prevention efforts that are going on in our backyard and in our community, and Pastor Scott Treadway may speak to this later on, but there's a segment of our population that is on the fringe of becoming homeless, and facilities like the one on Ryder Way that is serving that deserving population with food, with resources, with counseling, with medical. You saw the mobile medical. So there's a good amount of other things besides just enforcement that is going on to keep folks above that line. And I know we're all committed to continuing to see those services continue in our community as well, so we don't see that population grow as well. So.
Any other questions? Okay, so I do have a request to speak, and oh my goodness, it's Scott Treadway. Thank you, ladies. Lives next door to me, and I never get to see him except here or
Well,
church.
You're always very busy. My name is Scott Treadway. I'm the lead pastor of Rancho Community Church and president of Community Mission of Hope. And we're about to celebrate our 50th year here in the city, serving the city, so we're very excited about that. Maybe we'll see you at a celebration next year. We do operate 2 sites that serve homeless families as well as homeless individuals and families at risk of homelessness. It was mentioned the Ryder Way site that serves 500 families a month. Usually that ends up closing the gap for them. They'll come and visit us perhaps in the final 10 days of the month, and then we're able to provide what they need to get through the month. A lot of these families make choices between keeping the power on, the water on, and food, and we try to make sure that they don't have to make those choices at the end of the month. We also manage the Pujol site in contract with the city that serves many of the chronic homeless. As we are aware, there are 3 basic categories of homelessness. There are the true victims of circumstance who are willing to get help. They don't want to be homeless. They just find themselves for any number of reasons homeless. And there are a lot of partners that exist to see to it that if they are willing to transition, willing to do the work, willing to get help, willing to get jobs, or perhaps be reunited with family, that happens. And just the last couple of months, there have been a lot of success stories lately from the work of the incredible homeless outreach teams, as well as Community Mission of Hope and other partners that have reunited people with a simple bus ticket, building bridges there, building relationships. We have had the privilege of getting 2 people jobs, and that, of course, is just so important to transition to being housed, as well as being contributing members of our community. There are, of course, the mentally and physically disabled who need interventory care to get help. That's very, very difficult. The county is helping with that at a level that's been pretty refreshing here lately, particularly with mental health. There are also the able-minded and able-bodied folks who choose to be homeless, and among them is a significant criminal element in that population. And again, we just cannot praise the work of the homeless outreach team enough. Having that kind of resource, which comes from the city, is just absolutely extraordinary, and probably the single greatest reason why we are going to see a lot of success. There are simply things government can do that an army of nonprofit organizations can't, by mobilizing the resources that you've chosen to mobilize. The ordinances that are up tonight will give law enforcement the tools they need to discourage the harmful activities of the homeless that are criminal elements in our city, and it will discourage new homeless from coming. This is a very popular place to be homeless for a number of reasons: our geography, our demographics, our median income, and as we have mentioned many times, our generosity, which does oftentimes more harm than good via panhandling and other ways. There's a tremendous partnership between the City Council, law enforcement, nonprofits, and we are just happy to be one of many nonprofits helping in this area that are helping the homeless transition to self-sufficiency. A lot is being done in this regard with more cooperation than I've ever seen here in Temecula. So many, many thanks to the City Council, city staff, these two ladies here, Rob and Erica. They're just a tremendous team. We've already talked about discouraging panhandling. We have to keep getting that message out, and I hope that that will resonate, because if that spigot can be shut off and we can put our resources on the street to real effective efforts, then we are just going to be very much better off as a result. So I'm looking forward to the City of Temecula unifying around responsible compassion, where the community no longer enables homelessness by giving them everything they need to remain homeless, but instead focuses on helping those who wish to be helped on their way to self-sufficiency, and discouraging those who do not wish to be helped, especially the criminal element. And these ordinances will go a long way in that direction, and will help us live into that responsible compassion vision. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott, for everything that Community Mission of Hope has done. Rancho Community Church initiated this when they started their mission. I don't know how many years ago now, 6? 5, 6, 7? Yeah, so it's definitely a labor of love and ongoing, and we have formed so many great partnerships among our faith-based community and with our nonprofits, as Scott said. So that's what makes all of this work. And thanks to Robin, Erica, my goodness, Kevin, the officers really are key, because they have feet on the ground and the face-to-face. So they make those contacts and help to build trust, which may allow some of the homeless people to get help, and we've seen that recently. A lot more people are going back home, and again, we've seen the success stories with people going to work. And I have to mention the Salvation Army, a newer partner, and then Project Touch has been phenomenal, and thank you for everything that you've done to help us. So it's working, and we're going to continue. So,
Madam Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Can I introduce one other stakeholder in the audience?
You may.
Mr. Brian Ambrose is there. Please raise your hand.
Hi, Brian.
Brian is with the City of Murrieta, City Manager's Office, and we appreciate working alongside you on the Regional Alliance side of things as well.
Yeah. Okay, so we need to introduce this by title, Peter?
The first thing you need to do is adopt the administrative procedure.
All right, so I'll take a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, let's cast our votes. There it goes. All right, so that's 4 with Councilmember Stewart absent, and now Peter.
Yeah, and I'll read the title, and it is a rather long title. This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Temecula modifying the Temecula Municipal Code to regulate and prohibit certain conduct and conditions to protect health and safety by amending Section 9.65.060 to prohibit solicitations in restrooms open to the public, adding Chapter 9.70 prohibiting certain conduct on public property, including camping, hindering or obstructing free passage, bodily functions, walk, stand, or lie on public benches, or be on certain public fixtures, prohibiting dwelling in vehicles on city streets and public property, and regulating food distribution on public parks and public property, adding Chapter 9.75 prohibiting the storage of personal property on public property and providing for the removal of such property, repealing Chapter 9.02 and Section 10.8.080 as these are included in the new provisions, and finding that this ordinance is exempt from CEQA pursuant to Section 15060 of the CEQA guidelines.
All right, so we need a motion.
So move.
Second, Madam Mayor, and I have a quick question.
Mike?
Yeah, I mentioned as you were introducing, or I noticed as you were introducing the ordinance, we're regulating the giving out of food in public parks. Could staff just speak to that real quick? What manner are we governing that?
Essentially, we've found that there are some organizations which are routinely distributing food in public parks, and that's creating much of the problems we discussed earlier in terms of enablement. So we've been reaching out to them every time we see somebody, which is frequently, and encouraging them instead to coordinate with the Operation on Rider Way or any of the other organizations in the area that are doing food distribution. And the other thing we've been communicating with the faith-based community is that they can do food distributions on their own property, but we're discouraging that in the parks wherever possible.
No.
Go ahead, Mr.
I'll also point out that in researching this ordinance, we found that there are several cities that have had problems with health impacts for food that's not being properly stored or properly prepared. And in fact, one of the regulations is that they comply with all applicable health regulations, get health permits, and the ordinance that we've included here was taken from the city of Santa Monica, that had a great deal of problems with the distribution of food in public parks, and there were more problems relating to the impact on the homeless population than on the impacts to the parks and the surrounding areas.
Got it. So just a direct question, we're prohibiting the distribution of food by nonprofits in public parks. Is that what we're doing?
No, it's regulating the distribution.
How are we,
they have to have all appropriate state and county health permits, all requirements of the Temecula Municipal Code relating to the issuance of vending permit, temporary use permits, or event permit, plus the reservation of space in the parks. They have to they have to clean up the facilities after they're done, and that they need permits to actually distribute food on the streets as well as the parks. So it's more of a regulatory ordinance than an absolute prohibition.
Got it, and thank you for that clarity. Do we have a plan in place, Erica, or perhaps you guys are going to talk about this subsequently to get the word out? Lots, or I should say many of our churches find that to be quite the ministry of feeding the homeless in the parks, and this has the possibility of making a lot of good-hearted people lawbreakers. So we don't necessarily want to do that. Are we getting the word out?
Yes, we're actively reaching out to the faith-based community and including them particularly in the Temecula Murrieta Task Force, which has had 2 meetings so far, and we found people have been very receptive. Mm-hmm. In addition, Pastor Treadway has offered his support in terms of being a liaison with the faith-based community to communicate the expectations we have.
Beautiful, thank you.
Yeah, actually, this message, I believe, is resonating through the Interfaith Council, which is important to get that word out, and I believe that's being done.
Thank you. And I call for the question.
Okay, so whoever seconded, there
that
you
was
go.
Me.
Come on, there we go. All right, that is approved with Councilmember Stewart absent. Thank you, gentlemen, and Scott, and ladies, Kevin, everybody that's here, that's involved. Thank you very much. It really does take a huge team effort. Okay, so we can move on to board and commission reports. Zach, you're grinning.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Yes, this past Saturday, I have a slide for us tonight. This past Saturday, we opened another fabulous park here in the city of Temecula, Skyview Park, which is in the northeastern corner of the city. It's a really interesting park. It's very unique. There's not a lot of play equipment like what you'd see in like a typical park. The views are amazing. We pulled up off in the distance, hot air balloons taking off, so I can just imagine a lot of people hanging out there in the mornings watching that. It's a demonstration garden as well to show what's possible. There's no turf, just native plants and grasses and trees. It's a fun place. I can see families going there, letting their kids sort of roam around, learn about gardening and the environment, and then just soak in the views and have lunch. So very proud to be a part of that. And thanks to you and to Councilmember Comachero for joining us out there for that dedication.
It is a beautiful park. I mean, the views are endless.
Yeah, it was
So
gorgeous.
I encourage everyone to go and take a look. There's nothing like it in Temecula. It's our first park of that kind.
It's my new favorite park.
Yes.
But then every
Yes.
one of the 41 when we dedicated them became my new favorite park.
That's okay. Mr. Telesio, how are you?
Now that I've got my speaking voice on.
Yep.
We reviewed and subsequently approved some both cosmetic and architectural structural changes to the Target store, which is also expanding into the old garden center, which I didn't know was the old garden center. It's been empty for 2 years and I didn't know it.
Right.
But they're expanding into that section now, so it's to be happier and better shopping for people of Target.
Yeah, we love that. They're going to have it done by Christmas?
They didn't promise anything.
Oh, shoot. Okay. All right. Mr. Bob Hagel.
Nothing tonight, Madam Mayor.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you very much. Then we're going to move to Mr. City Manager.
Madam Mayor, just a couple updates. A reminder to the public, construction of the Temecula Parkway interchange is ongoing till December 2018. We've been doing our best to keep any ramp closures at night to have the least amount of impact, but please call the project hotline or you may visit the website to stay updated on any traffic impacts and construction details. And speaking of parks, the city will host a ribbon-cutting ceremony to unveil the first of several new themed playgrounds that are being constructed at various park sites around the city. This is part of our promise to the public to improve our aging infrastructure, including our parks, made possible with Measure S funds. The city is renovating many of our older playgrounds to ensure they are safe, up to date, and also themed. Our park subcommittee of Councilmember Comachero, Councilmember Stewart have worked hard to ensure each new playground will be creatively themed to enrich the young imaginations for generations to come. The playground at Butterfield Stage Park will go from the typical slide structure to a creatively designed nature's treehouse theme featuring a treehouse hideout for our youngest citizens to explore. And there are additional themed playgrounds that will be completed over the next few months, and they're included on the screen. We'll provide more details as we get closer to the dates when they will be open, but the first of which will be Butterfield Stage Road Park, and that will be on November 1st, 10 a.m., and the public is welcome to join us for that. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Oh, gosh, there's so many things going on. That's wonderful. Peter, anything?
Yes, we had a closed session tonight. We have no reportable actions under the Brown Act.
All right, thank you. In that case, I will entertain adjournment to the next meeting.
So moved.
Second.
And second, all in favor? Aye. And we stand adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.
Must be late.